Nathaniel Pope shoved a heavy coin pouch into Willa Wade's folded patchwork quilt. "Take the gray mare. Ride before Vance's men reach the gate." The warning came too late. 3 riders pushed through the dust with branding irons strapped to their saddles, and Willa stepped in front of Nathaniel's splinted arm with his Winchester in her hands. The heavy lever cracked down and up, one hard metallic sound carrying across the yard. He reached toward her shoulder, then stopped. Pulling her behind him would ease his fear. It would also tell her that after 10 years, he still did not believe she had the right to choose what she defended. "You gave me a roof when I had nothing," Willa said without looking back. "Do not use it to chase me away now." She stood at the porch rail, boots planted wide on the timber boards, the rifle angled toward the muddy yard rather than any man's chest. Nathaniel remained half a step behind her. His left arm was bound tight across him, and every breath rubbed pain through his collarbone. But the sharper ache came from seeing how calmly she held the ground he had tried to send her from. The riders pulled up short. Their horses tossed their heads at the smell of iron and rain. "Put the gun down, Willa," the lead rider called. His hand moved away from his own holster. "Mr. Vance sent us to mark Pope's breeding mares. His time is up." "Then Roland Vance can come mark them himself," she answered. "He can do it in front of Walter Royce, the town clerk, and every man who heard him promise Saturday was the deadline. He does not get to send 3 riders up a ridge road and call theft a collection." The rider glanced past her at Nathaniel, perhaps expecting him to correct the woman. Nathaniel said nothing. "You have until I count 10 to turn those horses," Willa continued. "After that, I fire into the hitching post." "The mare on your left looks nervous enough to carry you back to town without asking." The horse proved her point by sidestepping hard. One of the men swore. The leader spat into the dirt, but he turned his mount. The other 2 followed him down the ridge, their branding irons knocking against leather. Only when the dust began to settle did Willa lower the Winchester. "They were looking for you," Nathaniel said. "Not the mares. Vance wanted to know whether you had left." She turned. Her gaze went to the quilt on the railing and the silver dollars that had spilled from his pouch into its faded squares. "And you meant to oblige him. I meant to keep you clear of a sinking ranch. I can swim." She replaced the rifle on its pegs beside the door. "Show me the ledger." 10 minutes later, the leather-bound book lay open on the scarred kitchen table. Nathaniel kept his thumb over the final figure until Willa gave him the particular look of someone deciding whether patience was still a virtue. He moved his hand. Red ink filled the bottom line. The bridge washout had cost him 2 wagon teams, 3 months of feed money, and the use of his left arm. Then Vance had bought the ranch's debt from the bank and shortened the time for payment. By Saturday evening, Nathaniel had to settle the account or surrender the breeding mares and the north pasture. Willa read every entry. Nathaniel watched her eyes move over the page, steady and quick. The old canvas coat hook he had nailed up for her 10 years before still hung by the door. Her tin cup sat on the shelf, washed so many times the rim had gone pale. He had told himself both things remained because throwing away useful objects was foolish. The lie had lasted better when she was in California. Walter Royce's telegram had ended it. 10 years earlier, Nathaniel had found Willa beside a logging road in freezing rain. She had been 20, orphaned, hollow-cheeked, and too proud to ask for food after 2 days without it. He had given her stew, a room, and wages for stable work. 2 years later, when she left with a horse-breaking outfit bound for California, he had said the road was open whenever she wished to take it. He had not said the house would be too quiet after she did. "Walter told me about the bridge, and your arm," Willa said. "Walter talks too much for a man with so few teeth." "He also said Vance bought your feed note." She tapped the red figure. "Why did you not send word?" Because it is my debt. And I am what? A guest too delicate to hear numbers? You came back because you think one bowl of stew made you beholden for life? Her chair scraped the floor. I did not ride north to repay charity. I came because this place mattered to me before you decided I was allowed to matter back. The words landed cleanly. Nathaniel had no answer ready, which was often how he knew Willa had found the truth. A heavy thud sounded in the yard. Through the window he saw Miller's feed wagon beside the barn, piled high with baled hay. Relief moved through him too quickly to be trusted. He rose and went outside, Willa behind him. "Drop it by the loft," Nathaniel called. Miller kept both hands on the brake lever. "Can't do it, Pope. Vance owns your winter credit. Said if I unload, I lose every timber haul from his mill. You brought it 6 miles, and I am taking it 6 miles back." Miller looked ashamed, though not enough to risk his family's bread. "I am sorry." He cracked the reins. The wagon made a slow circle and rolled away with the ranch's winter feed. Nathaniel watched until the last bale vanished between the pines. The numbers arranged themselves in his mind with cold obedience. "I sell the breeding mares," he said. "That keeps the workhorses fed for a month." "And kills the ranch by spring," Willa replied. "It buys time." "It buys Vance a cheaper funeral." She stepped into the yard and looked toward the north pasture, where 20 young horses moved through the wet grass. They were sound and strong. Every one of them knew a saddle, a rein, and a rider's weight, but none had yet learned to stand quiet when a saw screamed or a timber chain struck iron. "The camps are losing horses," she said. "At the depot, I heard 3 foremen complaining about teams that bolt at cross-cut saws and steam whistles. They do not need me to break these colts from the beginning. They need me to timber season them." "In 3 days?" "They are green, not wild. I can work them in small strings, put the steadiest horses at the head, and teach the rest that noise does not mean death." She faced him. "I need 3 days." Nathaniel almost laughed, but Willa's face stopped him. "I have spent 8 years breaking and finishing horses for the Miller outfit and railroad contractors," she continued. "Let me take the young herd up the timber trail. On Saturday, I put them through a public trial. If they hold the camps, give us a winter contract and half in advance. If they fail, no outfit will trust your name again." "My name is mine to risk." She came up the steps until only the width of his sling separated them. "I want a fair cut of the advance and authority over the training. That is not charity, Nathaniel. It is business." He studied the woman before him. The starving girl remained in his memory because fear preferred old pictures. The woman standing there had crossed 2 states, earned contracts in a trade that forgave neither hesitation nor weakness, and returned because she chose to. Needing her frightened him more than losing the ranch. "3 days is not much," he said. "It is enough to prove which ones can learn and which ones cannot." She glanced toward the pasture. "And it is all Vance left us." "Then we have already wasted the morning." By mid-afternoon, Willa had divided the 20 horses into small strings and brought the first 3 into the north pasture. Nathaniel leaned against the timber fence while she stood in the ring with a long lead rope and a voice too low for him to make out. He had expected force. Most rough string riders used noise and exhaustion until a horse surrendered. Willa did the opposite. She asked, waited, and made the right answer easier than the wrong one. A pine crashed somewhere beyond the ridge. The earth shivered. All 3 horses reared against their lines. Willa did not jerk the ropes or shout. She widened her stance and held a measured tension until the animals discovered that her calm was stronger than their panic. One by one, they came down, blowing hard. She released the pressure the instant they stood. Nathaniel felt pride rise in him, warm and inconvenient. He had given her a place to survive. She had gone away and made herself formidable.
The gray mare wandered to the fence and took Nathaniel's hat neatly from his head. Willa wiped mud from her cheek. She has good judgment. I have fed that thief for 2 years. She respects competence. The mare lifted the hat beyond his reach. With one arm useless, Nathaniel could only glare. Willa came over, took the brim from the mare's teeth, and handed it through the rails. She also knows you checked the water trough twice while pretending to rest, Willa said. Water does not pump itself. Walter can manage a handle. Her voice softened. You do not have to carry every corner alone. Nathaniel put on his damp hat. The last time I trusted another man with a corner, the bridge went into the creek. I am not another man. No, he said, before caution could stop him. You never were. Her eyes held his. The mare breathed warm against his shoulder, and for a foolish second, he was grateful to the animal for giving him something else to look at. Willa turned back to the ring. Let me hold up this corner with you. He wanted to answer yes. The word pressed behind his teeth. Yet some stubborn piece of him still believed a man who could not provide safety had no right to ask anyone to share his danger. So he said, The bay favors his right foreleg. Willa gave him a look over her shoulder. Coward. He almost smiled. Horse trainer. That evening, the annual harvest supper filled the town hall with kerosene, light, wet coats, roasted meat, and enough cheap whiskey to improve every man's opinion of his own voice. Nathaniel sat near the rear wall with his aching arm supported on the table. Willa crossed the room to fetch coffee. Roland Vance stood among 3 logging bosses, broad in the shoulders and polished in expensive dark cloth. His gold watch chain shone whenever he moved. He saw Willa before she reached the copper urn. Well, Vance called loud enough to quiet the nearest tables. Pope's best charity investment has come home. Nathaniel's chair legs struck the floor. Vance smiled. Did California run out of wages, Willa, or did you hear there was still a little meat on Pope's bones before the bank picked him clean? Willa stopped with 2 tin cups in her hands. Her face became still in the way it had on the porch, but Nathaniel saw 1 drop of coffee slip over the rim and strike her knuckle. He crossed the room before anger could choose a worse method. He pulled a heavy chair beside her, sat with deliberate care, and laid his splinted arm on the table between Vance and the camp bosses. If she is charity, Nathaniel said, the rest of us are operating at a dead loss. A few men laughed. Vance did not. Nathaniel looked at Willa, not at the crowd. He could have told them about the rain, the hunger, and the girl who had worked until her palms split rather than accept a free meal. That story belonged to her. He would not spend it to make himself look noble. Willa set down the cups. I held contracts with the Miller outfit and the Southern Pacific cruise in California, she said. Saturday I am testing 20 remounts that already know the saddle and rein. I am finishing them for saws, chains, and steam whistles. Any foreman tired of paying Vance's price for half-broke nags may bring a contract. One of the bosses leaned forward. 20? 20 sound horses. You may inspect their legs before the trial. And if they spook? Vance asked. Willa finally looked at him. Then you will have something worth smiling about. She picked up 1 cup and handed the other to Nathaniel. The room's murmur rose around them, but she sat beside him as if the chair had always been hers. On the way to the buckboard, Nathaniel fumbled with the knot at his neck. The sling had slipped low, dragging at the broken bone. Willa stepped close. "Hold still." "I am standing still." "You are arguing in place." She undid the knot, drew the canvas snug, and retied it. Her knuckles brushed his chest. Nathaniel caught the clean scent of rain horse and the soap she had always used too sparingly. "Thank you," he said. She looked up. "You did not say you were fine." "I judged the lie would not survive inspection." "Your judgment improves when injured." Her hands remained against him for one quiet beat. Nathaniel wanted to cover them with his good hand. He wanted to ask whether the room in the house still felt like hers. Instead, he stepped back, because asking while she was fighting to save his ranch felt too much like tying gratitude to affection. The restraint cost him. That was how he knew it was not indifference. The next morning, he led Willa into the main tack room. His father's ledgers, the good saddles, and the winter gear had occupied every inch of the place for years. Nathaniel had cleared a section along the far wall. A thick shelf sat bolted to the beams. 3 iron hooks waited above it, and a locking rack fit Willa's Winchester. A small lamp stood beside a blank leather ledger. On the chair lay the old patchwork quilt. Willa stopped in the doorway. "I moved the old rigging," Nathaniel said. "You'll need a place for your gear during the trial." She ran her fingertips over the fresh wood. "For 3 days. For the season." Her gaze went to the bolts sunk into the load-bearing beam. Walter Royce shuffled in, carrying a smooth pine board. "Found this by the mill. A remount yard needs a sign." He offered it to Willa. "You aim to stay and run the place, don't you?" Nathaniel considered throwing Walter into the water trough, age notwithstanding. Willa took the board, but kept her eyes on Nathaniel. "Do you want me to stay?" The plain question stripped away every useful defense. He wanted her there when the first kettle rattled in the morning. He wanted her hat beside his on the peg, and her voice in the barn, correcting his horses and his habits with equal confidence. He wanted the house to stop sounding empty. "The ranch will need good hands," he said. Willa's expression closed. Nathaniel heard his own answer and despised it, but pride had already pulled the words beyond reach. She set the blank sign beside the quilt. "You think an empty purse makes you unfit to ask?" Her voice remained low, which made it cut deeper. "You think if you cannot buy my safety, you have nothing to offer. But poverty is not what drives people away, Nathaniel. You do. You choose for them before they can choose for themselves." She walked past him. Walter looked at the open doorway. "I reckon she answered the question you did not." "Pump the north trough, Walter." "With my few remaining teeth." Nathaniel turned on him. Walter raised both hands. "Going now." By noon, Roland Vance rode into the yard with 2 men behind him. Nathaniel met him beside the trough. Willa worked in the barn shadows close enough to see, but not to hear. Vance pulled a thick wallet from his coat and placed a stack of banknotes on the wet rim. "That clears the feed debt," he said. "There is enough left for a doctor in Portland." "What do you want?" "The north pasture and a right-of-way to the river. You stop Saturday's trial and sign that. Willa Wade has no claim or interest in this ranch. She takes her horse and goes." Nathaniel stared at the money. It meant hay, mares, and winter. It meant saving everything his father had left him. It also offered the old comfort of sacrifice. Send Willa away, call it protection, and never admit how much he wanted her to stay. Vance lowered his voice. "A poor man should not drag a woman into the mud with him." Nathaniel looked toward the barn. Willa stood motionless between the doors. From that distance she could see only the money and his hand reaching toward it. He picked up the notes. Vance smiled. Nathaniel dropped the stack into the mud at the man's boots.
"You can buy hay," he said. "You cannot buy the right to decide where she stands. Get off my land."
Vance's smile vanished. "You just killed this ranch. Then you may attend the funeral from the public road." For one instant, Vance's right hand twitched toward his coat. Nathaniel's own revolver remained holstered. Willa appeared at the barn door, with the Winchester resting across her forearms, muzzle down, eyes steady. She did not need rescuing, and Nathaniel did not need to prove courage by drawing first. Vance gathered his reins. "Saturday will finish you," he rode out. Two young ranch hands watched the banknotes darken in the mud. Fear did what Vance's threats had not. They laid down their forks and went to pack. Nathaniel let them go. Then he crossed the yard to Willa. "We have 2 days," he said. "How do you want the drive run?" Her face changed by one small degree. It was not forgiveness, but there was room for him to earn it. "We take the steep timber trail," she said. "You ride drag and follow my signals." Nathaniel nodded. "Yes, ma'am." A corner of her mouth lifted. "That injury may yet improve you." The next day, Willa led the horses up the rutted trail in 4 small strings, steady animals placed at the front of each group. Mud sucked at their hooves. Crosscut saws rasped through the pines, and the crack of falling timber rolled across the slopes. Nathaniel rode at the rear of the last string, his collarbone burning with every step. The remaining hands kept watching him, perhaps waiting for Pope to seize command the moment things went wrong. A steam donkey shrieked beyond the trees. The lead horses wheeled, crowding the narrow trail. One slipped toward the edge. Nathaniel's instinct drove his heel against the stirrup. Then he saw Willa raise one gloved hand. "Hold." He stopped. She turned the gray mare across the trail in a tight arc, not fighting the herd, but bending its panic back toward her. Nathaniel held the rear as she had ordered, making himself a steady wall. The horses trembled, blew, and settled. The danger passed in less than a minute. The change in Nathaniel did not. All his life he had mistaken taking command for carrying responsibility. Willa had asked him to trust her skill, and the world had not fallen apart when he obeyed. At dusk, they rested the herd in a sheltered cut. Nathaniel sat on a fallen log, exhausted enough that the trees seemed to sway while standing still. Willa handed him a canteen and a piece of hardtack. He drank without claiming he did not need it. "That may be the bravest thing you did today," she said. "Taking water?" "Taking help without arguing." I argued silently. "I heard it." She sat beside him, their shoulders nearly touching. Nathaniel turned the canteen in his hand. "I kept the quilt." Willa became still. "For 10 years," he continued, "I kept telling myself it was useful. Truth is, the house went quiet after you left. The quilt reminded me that for a while I was not only working to survive, I was working because someone would be warm when I came home." He looked at her. Saying more would be simpler than stopping, and more dangerous. "I should have asked you to stay, then," he said. "I was afraid you might say no. So I made leaving easy and called it kindness." Willa drew the blank pine sign from inside her coat. She must have carried it all day. "You made leaving possible," she said. "That mattered. But it was not the same as asking." "No." She ran her thumb along the board's smooth edge. "You still have time to learn the difference."
Saturday arrived cold and clear.
The town's harvest grounds had been turned into a rough arena with wagons and rope. Logging bosses, mill hands, families, and half the merchants in town crowded the fence. Vance stood near the center in his dark coat, wearing the expression of a man waiting to purchase something after it failed. Willa rode in on the gray mare with the remounts behind her still arranged in the same small strings she had worked for 3 days. Nathaniel remained by the gate. The ranch's future entered the ring under her hand, and he would not steal the moment by pretending it belonged to him. For an hour, Willa tested the herd by strings rather than all at once. Men cracked bullwhips, revolvers fired blanks into the air. Timber chains struck corrugated iron with a crash that made children cover their ears. A whistle screamed. The young horses shifted and sweated, but they did not bolt. Each time fear moved through them, they looked to Willa, to the steady lead horses, and to the same calm they had found in the pasture. When the final chain fell, the last string held. The cheer rose from the loggers first, then swept through the crowd. A foreman from the Miller outfit pushed forward with a folded contract. "Pope, I will take all 20, half the price now and the rest on delivery." Vance looked at Nathaniel, waiting to see whether pride would make him claim the victory. Nathaniel pointed toward Willa. "You are speaking to the wrong person. It is her herd." The foreman faced her. "The contract is with the remount yard," Willa said. "Training authority remains mine, and the advance is entered under my name." The foreman glanced at the horses, then sighed. He placed a bank envelope in her hand. The ranch was safe because Willa had made herself worth trusting, and because Nathaniel had finally stopped standing in the way of that trust. Vance turned toward the road, but the crowd no longer parted for him. Men who had once lowered their voices when he passed were pressing forward to inspect Willa's horses and offer their hands. Vance had to shoulder through them one by one, while congratulations rose behind him. No one called after him. No one asked his opinion. By the time he reached his horse, the town had already turned its back. Willa did not count the money in public. She tucked the envelope inside her coat, fetched a hammer and chisel from the buckboard, and carried the pine sign to the north pasture gate. Nathaniel followed. "The debt can be paid today," he said. "You do not owe this ranch another hour." "Good." She set the board across the gate rail. "I never meant to stay from obligation." The chisel bit into the wood. Nathaniel watched letters appear beneath her hand. "Wade and Pope, Remount Yard." Willa turned the sign toward him. "I am choosing the work. I am choosing this land." Her voice softened, though not enough to hide inside. "And I am choosing the stubborn man who has finally begun asking instead of deciding." Nathaniel's throat tightened. He had imagined this moment in safer forms: a practical arrangement, a season's contract, a room kept ready without any dangerous words attached. His gaze dropped to the sling across his chest, then to the mud dried on his boots. The advance would settle Vance's note, but it would not make the ranch rich. Winter would still mean long days, thin margins, and work his broken arm could not yet do. Willa had earned a name beyond Oregon. She could choose easier ground than this. For one last instant, the old instinct urged him to make that choice for her. He lifted his eyes. "I cannot offer you an easy life," he said. "Not this winter. Maybe not any winter. I have one useful arm, a ranch that nearly died, and a habit of saying the wrong thing when the right thing matters most." Willa's mouth curved, but she did not rescue him from the rest. 10 years ago, I wanted you to survive one night," he continued. "Now, I want mornings, winter's quarrels over horses, and every quiet supper after. I want you here as my partner and as the woman I love. I am afraid you may still say no, but I am asking anyway. Will you stay because you choose me
too. A hard wind swept down from the Cascades, bending the dry grass and tugging at the loose ends of Nathaniel's sling. Willa lifted the sign and fitted it against the gatepost with both hands, steadying it against the cold. "I have crossed 2 states and worked for men with deeper pockets than yours," she said. "None of them gave me what this place did. A roof, a choice." Her eyes met his over the top edge of the board. "I choose the hard winters," she said. "I choose the thin margins. And I choose you." Nathaniel laughed once, unsteady with relief. "You might have said that before I confessed the condition of my arm. I wanted the whole offer." She stepped close and took his good hand. "Yes, Nathaniel. I choose you, too." He bent and kissed her forehead, gentle because the crowd was near and because tenderness did not need spectacle to be certain. Her fingers tightened around his. When they stepped apart, Willa rested the sign against the post. "We will hang it after the horses are put up," she said. That evening, Walter found them in the tack room, putting away bridles. He carried an oilskin packet, gray with age, and looked as if dust had been living in his hair all afternoon. "I spent half the day in your father's trunk," he told Nathaniel. "After Vance spoke of a right-of-way, I wanted to know whether he had any old survey or agreement that let him cross the north pasture. I found this instead." Inside lay a recorded deed bearing the county seal. Willa's father had owned half the north pasture. A letter in Nathaniel's father's hand admitted that after a barn fire he had driven Wade from the land, hidden the duplicate deed, and behaved as if the whole pasture belonged to the Pope ranch. Nathaniel read the page twice. Shame settled heavier than his sling. "My father robbed yours," he said. Willa took the letter. For a moment, Nathaniel thought she might burn it. Instead, she folded it around the deed and returned both to the oilskin. "No," she said. "Your father tried to bury the truth. Mine is dead, and yours is dead. We are the ones standing here. The half-share is yours, no argument. It was always mine." She slipped the packet into her coat. "Now Vance cannot touch the right-of-way, and neither can anyone else without my consent." The paper did not save the ranch. The contract already had. It did something quieter. It returned Willa's name to the land from which another man had tried to erase it. Nathaniel looked at the shelf he had built for her and understood how poor an offering it would have been without the courage to ask her to use it. Willa picked up the patchwork quilt from the chair. "Come on. To the house. That is where quilts generally earn their keep." He followed her outside. The wind had sharpened, carrying the first bitter promise of winter across the north pasture. At the gate, the new sign rested against the post. Willa held it level while Nathaniel placed the iron nail with his good hand. "You strike," he said. "My aim is unreliable." "Your aim has been unreliable for years." She drove the nail home with one clean blow. Their names held together against the wood, while the cold wind worried at their coats. At the house, Willa carried the quilt through the front door instead of leaving it folded for travel. Warmth from the stove met them at the threshold, along with the smell of coffee and split pine. Nathaniel closed the door against the wind and added a second cup to the stove table. She noticed, said nothing, and poured coffee into both. Outside, the remounts settled beneath the cold sky. Inside, the lamp burned over 2 ledgers, 2 cups, and a future neither of them had chosen for the other. "Last time you gave me a roof," Willa said. Nathaniel took the chair beside hers, not at the head of the table. "This time," she continued, laying her hand over his, "we are making a home."